Part two of a Rule 5 draft preview because we have more arms, of course. It's like a never ending search. And I think that's why we had to do another follow up here. And there might be some arms I even like more out of this group. So we'll talk about that. But also, we've been wanting to discuss what makes a fastball unique. When we're scouting these fastballs, when we're talking about, a 60 grade, 70 grade, or a 50 grade fastball or below that, what are the separating factors besides velocity? We're going to get into that a little bit as well. Of course, it's the call up. I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. Jack, is it any surprise to you at all that I had more arms that I wanted to talk about for the Rule 5 draft?
No, I don't think so. You were like, you're going to kill me. It's like, no, I'm not going to kill you because it's good if we hit on all these guys before they get taken. And the thing about the Rule 5 draft is you look for data points. Like, I think that is where we have transitioned in the Rule 5 over the last half decade or so, where it's not, oh, this guy put up a 2.1 ERA out of the bullpen in Double A. We're going to take him. It's, oh, this guy is 97 to 98 with good fastball characteristics, or he has a sweeper that we can have him throw 75% of the time and he can survive in our bullpen, and we're excited to take this project on. So I think the Rule 5, more than really any other process in baseball, and I'm thinking international free agency, you don't have pitch data on these guys, and you don't have batted ball data on these guys. Like, it is a very pitcher focused thing, the Rule 5, and the MLB draft too. You're going to take the guy that threw 120 innings at a 1.8 at East Carolina.
Yeah.
Like, Gavin Williams was taken because he was a horse and he threw hard. Paul Skeens was taken because he was a horse and he threw hard. And then all of a sudden you see that the splinker is the best pitch in baseball. Data comes in pro ball, and this is like the one acquisition phase of baseball that has to do with what you've already done in pro ball.
Absolutely. And I think also those underrated draft picks would then fit under the bill of like the pitch stuff, the pitch shapes, things like that, and think,
Yeah.
oh well, why would they take this guy like Alejandro Rosario, right? He
Right.
had a 70 ERA at Miami. He wasn't a first round pick, but he was still a guy that was taken. And I know some Rangers fans were scratching their heads saying, why did we take a dude with a 70 ERA anywhere before like the last round?
Yeah.
Well, because they saw some data points there. But to your point, he kind of fell into their lap, and then they were able
Right.
to take him when they wanted to. And that signing bonus that he got, I don't think was too substantial. It's similar with the Rule 5, where like if you're going to try to mine for gems here, you're going to have to find some characteristics that stand out to you, and then figure out why he's not performing to that ability. Because to your point, if a guy is dominating, he's going to be protected. He's going to be
On
on
the
the
40 man.
he's
Yeah.
going to be on the 40 man. And in college or in high school, even if a guy is dominating to a ridiculous degree, he's going to be a first or second round pick. So this is how you kind of mine for those gems. And it becomes almost a math equation where it's okay, why with these characteristics, why is he not succeeding to the degree that I think he should be?
Yeah.
Or other times it's we only have a small sample here, but the characteristics of this fastball really stand out. I think this guy could really be good if he can stay healthy. And that's another
Right.
side of it too.
It is identifying the problem and figuring out if your organization has the means to find a solution. And that is the Rule 5 draft.
Yeah.
Like, again, if there was no problem, like you're saying, they'd be on the 40-man roster. I think there are two organizations that are exempt from that rule, and it's the Rays and the Dodgers.
Yeah.
They have to leave good players unprotected, and there's a reason that Evan Reifert was unprotected, even though he's been money. And I think the career ERA in the minor leagues is like sub 3 at this
Yeah.
point. Like, the results are there in the Rays system and the Dodgers system, and you just pluck those guys, understandably so. But everybody else is like, okay, why was this guy struggling? Do we have the means to help him get out of that? And if you feel like the answer is yes, then that's the kind of guy you take in the Rule 5.
100%. And I think the funny thing about a team like the Rays though is any guy almost that they're going to have is going to be unique anyways.
Yeah.
So even the unprotected players, like they're going to have something unique about them. And just diving into specifically the fastballs and just some of what I'm looking at when I'm looking through these Rule 5 candidates and draft. And this is also ties into when we're putting scouting grades on fastballs and all that good stuff. But I thought this was the perfect time to have this fastball conversation because even more so, you're really digging deep and trying to find the little things here and there. And the way I look at it is like you have a handful of different ways to make your fastball unique, some more important than others. But at the end of the day, hitters at this point, especially at the big league level, they have seen that generic over the top, regular 16 inches of induced vertical break, 6 foot release height, fastball at 94 miles per hour, or whatever it would be, kind of average to each level. It's all relative for their entire lives, right? Like they have seen that so many times. And throughout the minor leagues, it's mostly generic stuff that they're going to see until they get to the upper levels. And, even then, most of the guys that you're going to see are just executing generic stuff a little bit better. Of course, you have the studs, but you're not facing studs every single day. That's why the leap from AAA to the big leagues was as ridiculous as it was really ever this past year, because anyone that was unique, because it was getting plucked more than ever. But the big thing is, how do you give hitters a look that they don't consistently see on a daily basis, or basically that they are comfortable with? Because our brains are really, really incredible things. And
Yeah.
when we can, what not us, but I guess just theoretically, what the human brain can do, right, is you get enough repetition and muscle memory, it sees that ball out of the hand, and these big league hitters can predict where it's going to end up essentially. And that's why, they're able to make contacts with 95, 96, and it's only 60 feet 6 inches away. So how do you defy what their brains are conditioned to see? You either have to defy gravity more than the average fastball does, right? So if a hitter sees a fastball coming from a 6 foot release height, and it's a straighter fastball, they've seen a couple of them, like, okay, I know roughly. Obviously, they're not doing the math calculations in their head, but they know that it's roughly going to be somewhere around, this range, right? And that's the cool thing, is like, okay, I see the ball coming out of his hand here. Okay, it's probably going to end up in the bottom part of the zone. That's where I'm going to put my bat and I'm going to get my swing off. Like, it's all innate at that point. So how can you challenge that? Well, you can get more ride than the average fastball. And that's why we always talk about induced vertical break. And everyone that listens to the show knows about that, right? But that's
Yeah.
going to be something that we look at. But the thing that I hammer home as much as anything is, you can't just look at induced vertical break. That only tells you half of the story,
Yeah.
because 19 inches of induced vertical break from a 6'3" release height is a lot more standard, right? That's closer to what the average pitcher would be getting from a 6'3" release height, because it's naturally easier to induce vertical break from a higher release. However, if you're getting 16 inches of induced vertical break from a 5.3 foot release height, that's more unique.
Yeah.
Less induced vertical break, but way more unique, because the average pitcher that's releasing from that low is going to really struggle to get vert, and is generally going to get more horizontal as well. So that's the fun thing too, is how different are you from typical pitchers in that release slot as well. So we'll get to like how a release slot is unique too, but also within that, it's in your bucket, in your release bucket, how are you different from the other pitchers that would be in that bucket?
Yeah, I think you sent me this text at like 1 a.m., I'll say, maybe 1:30 a.m. It was definitely before 2, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here. But I thought this was the bar of all bars. And you essentially said, like, vert without release height is height without weight. And that makes perfect sense, because it's like, okay, a guy is 6'5". All right, that's tall, right? Or I think best example is, let's call vert weight. A guy weighs 250 pounds. All right. That is obviously very overweight for somebody that is 5'11",
Yeah.
but that might be normal for somebody that's 6'9" and they're a physical specimen.
Yep.
So, like, what does 250 actually mean? You have to know height. So what does 19 inches of induced vertical break actually mean? Does it look like Nick Pivetta, who's totally over the top? Or does it look like a Christian Javier, who's a little bit lower on plane? And Javier's fastball is better because it's lower with more vert. The lower the release height, coupled with the higher the vert, is going to be the better gravity-defying fastball, quote unquote.
100%. 100%. I forgot that was, I was trying to remember what the exact analogy I made was, but that's exactly what I'm trying to get at, right? Is
Yeah.
you only have the weight. You don't know if that person's overweight or not. You don't know what their build actually is until you know their height. And I think it's essentially the same thing. And that's one aspect of it, right? I think that is, though, vert relative to release height is the number one way where I think you can just stifle hitters because at the end of the day, that is as close to defying physics as you can get, right? It's what is the standard? How much is the standard fastball going to drop at 94 miles per hour from a 6 foot release height versus what my fastball is going to drop because I'm able to create this spin and I'm able to have this flatter vertical attack or vertical approach angle and I'm able to just make this ball defy gravity a little bit more. Like it really is that crazy. And it's funny because I was talking to a family friend and very, very casual baseball fan. I wouldn't even say casual baseball fan. I would say casual sports fan that was watching the playoffs. And they were watching the Brewers game where Tobias Myers was throwing. And he asked me, he's like, why does everyone keep swinging under that fastball when they know it's coming? Obviously, he's doing something. And which I was like, good on you for not just saying, oh, why can't you hit that? He knew
Right.
something's going on here, right? This is a smart guy. Something's going on here. Why does everyone, all of these major league hitters, keep swinging under it? I'm like, that's because his fastball has so much more ride than almost any other arm that these guys are seeing. So even at that point, they game plan for Tobias Myers, right? Like the Mets were ready to go and they felt like, hey, we know what we need to do. We need to get to the top of everything. Pete Alonso's getting up there in the box doing his chop down field
Yeah.
move every single time. And these guys are still swinging under it because no matter how much you try to override your brain sometimes, it's just too absurd. And then you mix in enough secondaries, it makes it even more difficult. The fun and challenging thing about this is a lot of times the guys that generate the most vert relative to their release height will tend to struggle a little bit sometimes to find a good feel to spin it. Because I think it's just in terms of a breaking ball. Because sometimes it just seems like they're really good at backspinning and they don't really pronate or supinate as well. And then that's where you try to piece together the secondaries that
Yeah.
work best for the guy. So then from that point, you got to identify, see a pronator, see a supinator. Can we tweak this? Could it be a guy that benefits from a split? And usually the high vert guys that don't have the changeup, that's where they go to the split. And that's where you see Bryce Miller turn into what he turned into last year.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note that a lot of, I think, young pitchers or a lot of people that grew up pitching, this is not a foreign concept to you. You just heard it articulated in a different way. By the way, it looks like I'm holding the little Christmas tree, which is great. You heard it articulated in a different way. And I had an awesome pitching coach growing up. And essentially what he kept hammering into my brain, and I ended up being, 16-year-old sinker shit, that kind of
You
thing.
had to be.
Yeah, because I was like not good, point blank. But essentially, the whole idea is keep your index and middle on your four seam fastball as long as you possibly can and feel that spin off.
Yeah.
That feel is taught to 80% of young pitchers in America, and that is teaching that spin. That spin in turn induces break, and you want to get down on the mound, that lowers your release height. This is not a foreign concept. Everybody has known that this has worked, but in the last 7, 8 years, we found a way to quantify this.
Yeah.
And that is what's so important there. So these guys are just the best at doing what every 10-year-old in America was taught to do with their four seam fastball.
100%. What's probably stood out to me the most though is a lot of these guys though they don't really know how they do it or don't really focus on it. They just do it.
It's a
And
feel thing. Yeah.
it's just kind of innate. And some people might be wondering, well, okay, well then if you're a guy that gets pretty good vert, why not just lower your release height? Your body moves the way that it's meant to move, and that's the other challenge in this thing. And that's the other thing that I think some of the better front offices are able to do is see the way this guy moves and say, wait, you actually could benefit from adjusting your release. Those guys are rare. Alejandro Rosario is actually another example of that. Rangers saw the way he was moving and said, that's a guy that probably would actually benefit from tweaking the release point. We just talked about who are we talking? Perkins, not Blake Perkins. Jack Perkins in
Jack
the
Perkins
A
with
system.
Oakland. Yeah.
Like that's a guy that, as an amateur, was better with the arm a little bit lower angle wise. It was more natural to him. He tried to get up higher, I think, to create more vert, or not even higher, just I think more vertical. And it wasn't as effective for him. He dropped back down to where it's natural, and his arm was looser, and he was able to spin the ball more naturally. So that's a big part of it. But the other thing is, and this is why I think Stuff Plus is a great idea in concept, but is still so unpredictable and a little bit faulty
Yeah.
is we still haven't figured out how to weigh all of these things. At the end of the day, what Stuff Plus tries to do, right, is value the standard deviations away from like how different you are in each of these important characteristics pitch wise, which
Yeah.
makes sense. So the unique aspects of your pitch will be valuable and as far away you are from the norm, more standard deviations away, like the better it is. The
Yeah.
challenge is how do you weight induced vertical break versus extension versus release height versus all of these different things. And I think that's the incomplete science of it because when I look at like extension, for example, that's another thing that we're going to look at. And when I'm trying to piece together this puzzle, right, the first place I look at a fastball is induced vertical break and release height and
Yeah.
velocity, right? Like, of course, velocity first, but then what is the induced vertical break relative to the release height? Most of the time, that's going to be either slightly above average or slightly below average, right? So then you got to piece other parts of the puzzle together. Is the extension above average or not? And then that's another wrinkle where it's okay, that can be a minor thing. If you get elite extension, then that can really help you. But usually that's even something that I think you see even less variance with. And then the next thing would probably be what's his vertical approach angle. And that'll usually tie in with IVB.
Yeah.
But that's another important thing too, because that's how the ball looks out of the hand as well. And that's another thing that you have to relate to release height. The higher the release height, the steeper that vertical approach angle is going to be. Meaning, like sinkers are going to be steeper vertical approach angle. So that's another way that where you can maybe find, like, hey, this guy kind of gets a decent amount of vert, but his vertical approach angle is kind of steep. Like, you can tinker with things there, or he's not getting a ton of vert. His release angle is super steep. He should tinker with a sinker, something along those lines. So the other thing is you look at the vertical approach angle relative to that release height. So a negative 4.8 vertical approach angle, that's something that I think is relatively standard, right? But if you look at it relative to release height, it's a different story. And I have a graph that I'll always reference, and it's average VAA on the like x-axis, and then average pitch release height on the y-axis, and you're able to just kind of see, okay, this guy releases from a 6 foot height.
Yeah.
If his VAA is negative 4.2, that is way flatter than the average pitcher from that release height. That's going to create some deception for hitters because they're used to a pitcher being steeper from that
Yeah.
release point. So those are all little things. Again, it's just how can you be different? And I think there's way more ways to be different beyond velocity. And that's why I always continue to emphasize that velocity, like a 99-mile-per-hour fastball, shouldn't automatically be a 70 grade heater
Correct.
because you can be deficient in all of these other areas and guys are going to pillage it.
So we got 14 minutes into the fastball conversation before we mentioned the V word, velocity. And I do think velo is the ultimate trump card. Like I think there are so many factors that go into an effective fastball. But if you are different in 3 of 6 major factors, the harder fastball among identical releases, among identical vert, among identical horizontal break, things like that, the harder fastball will almost always win. And we talk about, average VAA, we talk about average extension, average release height. Average velo is a thing as well. So you counter or you factor all of these things in, and like at the end of the day, I understand that there are some fastball characteristics of a Paul Skeens that are suboptimal, but he throws 102, which is the trump card. McClanahan extends really well. There are some other metrics that don't really love McClanahan's fastball, but when he buzzes 100 by you and he climbs the ladder on Devers and he gets 20.2 inches of vert at 100, that's unhittable.
Yep.
So you factor everything in, and if you can run it into the high 90s, 100, that essentially gives you more leeway from stock.
Yep, exactly. And the thing with the velocity side of things, from like for a reliever, makes all the sense in the world, right? Like
Yeah.
velocity, I think matters even more. But with starters going 5 innings now, hitters are seeing 98 plus a lot of times from the 6th inning onward. That's almost half
I
the game.
I think
So
average four seam fastball velocity this year in Major League Baseball was 94.3, 94.2 or 94.3, which is an insane number. Absolutely insane. That's not the game that we grew up with.
no, no, no. And that the thing beyond that is these hitters are getting more and more comfortable with velocity because again, from the sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth inning, you're seeing upper 90s nonstop.
Yeah.
So for a starting pitcher, again, yeah, velocity is great, but like you almost can't make a living just on that alone because
No.
hitters are seeing that already in the second half of the ball game, and they're going to get to you a second time through the lineup, third time through the lineup. They usually don't get to see hard throwing guys a second time. But
Right.
to your point, and I'm glad you mentioned Skeens. This is where this is why I'm so happy we have this wrinkle in the game because I would be disappointed if it was as simple as you put the numbers in, it spits out a value, and you know how good a pitcher is.
Yeah.
That would just ruin everything for me. Um, I really think, and we talk about this all the time. I'm still trying to piece it all together. And I want to create like archetypes for pitchers, the crossbody fires,
Yeah.
the low release guys, the high release guys, the guys that fly open a little bit, the extension guys and whatever, and then figure out what the average characteristics are of guys in that bucket. Because the reality is the hardest thing to quantify and the thing that I don't think we'll ever fully be able to quantify and is why I love talking to hitters about pitchers as much as some scouts like to say like, oh, like, what do players aren't great evaluators of talent. Yes, of course they are. They're playing.
Yeah.
Talk to the
They're the
guys,
ones that see it. Yeah.
ask them what it looked like in the box. Again, they might not help you write your scouting report, but they can absolutely give you some really valuable intel that can be applicable when you then look at the data and you then look at the video. Like we talk about a Sean Sullivan, like a scout can say, okay, yeah, that crossfire delivery is unique, and like that's why nobody can hit him. A hitter could give you an even more like special breakdown of that. And if a hitter tells me, oh, that ball looks like it's coming at my front hip every single time, so when the slider comes in, even though it has a 90 stuff plus, I can't pull the trigger because I'm thinking it's going to be a fastball in on my hands, like something along those lines. Like that's not going to be as quantifiable, and that's the fun nuance part of this whole thing. And that's where I think trying to figure out the value of a fastball can then kind of be a little bit more open ended because we're seeing guys like Michael King, the crossfire, and then you get the sinker and the four seamer, and how you locate and how you sequence, and the visuals that you create. A Paul Skeens, I really think, of course, the velocity is huge. I really think a huge part of it is it just looks weird. Like it
Yeah.
really just looks weird out of his hand. Like it's a high elbow. It's this weird like
Well, and he's
turn.
landing and turning, man. Like he's landing, he's planting with that lead foot, and then the torso
Mhm.
whips and fires. And like
It's a slingshot.
yeah, it's unique, man. And we talk about it. You're right. We talk about this all the time. We're quantifying essentially what happens from the ball at the pitcher's fingertips onward. So we're quantifying velocity. We're talking about where the fingertips actually are. We're talking about how close to home plate the fingertips actually are. But it's the shit that happens before that that separates good fastballs from great fastballs.
Yep. Nestor Cortez wouldn't be dancing every few pitches. By the way, vert machine, but
Yeah.
wouldn't be dancing every few pitches if there wasn't a value to throwing guys timing off. You look at Imanaga and that leg hesitation, things like that. Like
Yeah.
those are very extreme examples, but there are things that hitters do or that pitchers do that just disrupt. You talk about it too, where the glove flies at you first with certain guys, then the arm comes along. There's other guys where the arm action is super long and you just can't see the ball, and then it whips around you. Like those are all things that then you have to try to combine with the data and figure out how maybe it accentuates it or sometimes takes away from it too.
The one that everybody did in their backyard growing up that nobody, acknowledges in this is Clayton Kershaw. Like a young Kershaw, think about that little hitch that everybody imitated in his delivery. Like that's something that throws people off. We talk about DeGrom being a beat off in terms of timing. Like that is what makes 102 the unhittable 102. Because like we saw Jose Siri clip Mason Miller's 102 for a homer, but nobody's touching DeGrom's 102 except what, Jazz Chisholm. I think he's the only guy to homer off a DeGrom heater 100 plus or something like that. But at the end of the day, like there's just it's an individual game, obviously, And each pitcher really leans into their own thing that makes them unique. And that is in turn what makes the fastball unique is like these guys all move in a different way, going back to the way that pitchers move. Like their bodies are all different. They all move down the mound differently. And it's all going to come out as like relatively differently. And, you've got guys that, fit stock, but again, it's deviating from stock. And those are the guys that we talk about.
100%. And I think that's the back to the Jack Perkins conversation.
Yeah.
He gets slightly above, let's say he gets above average vert, but nothing crazy, nothing that jumps off the page. When your arm is more vertical, okay, you see guys see a lot of pitchers with a more vertical release angle that get above average vert. The more horizontal your arm goes, the more natural it is for that fastball to then run, right? So if you go more horizontal, but somehow still maintain vert and don't, give up that horizontal, that is a weird angle that hitters haven't seen. It's just
And
another
it
example
doesn't
of
make
that.
any sense. Again, hitters are programmed to see something, and you're giving them something that they're just like, yeah, this is witchcraft. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and I think we'll tie a bow on this in a follow up episode with the best big league fastballs, I think, and then compare that to some of the top prospects, or maybe compare some top prospect fastballs to big league fastballs to be able to provide some more concrete examples of this and how that all works. But for the sake of this episode, I figured it'd be a great tie into the fastballs that we're going to talk about here and why they are slightly unique or could be convertible to the major league level. The other side, and the last thing I want to mention is just also how that fastball sets up the rest of your arsenal, right? If
Yes.
you're a ride guy that then has stuff that's working really well downward, vertically, gyro slider, a splitter, a good changeup off of that. Like those are things that are going to work really well. Obviously, a slider can work really well off of that too if it's a sweeper, but you're going to want something else to spell lefties. The flip side of it is if you're a guy that whose best pitch is a changeup, and it's that kind of arm side running, fading changeup, and then you throw a two seamer, there can be some overlap and redundancy there that limits your ability to get whiff. Sixto Sanchez was a great pitcher, but that was always something I think like held back the whiff when he was healthy. I think Brian Bayo, it's something that can hold back the whiff. Then that's where you start to look at, is there more velocity separation? Are there other ways that you can separate? So it becomes this whole push and pull, and that's why I love it. And it's so much fun. But we might as well get right into these arms and then talk about these exact same things and how they
Yeah.
apply there. Before that, a quick break. All right. You want to start with Eiberson Castellano?
Let's do it. Eiberson Castellano. I had Ben Peoples pulled up, but give me the
Oh,
411 on Eiberson Castellano.
so Eiberson Castellano was one of the leading reasons why I wanted to do another episode here, just because a couple of these names that popped up, I I just started to realize, wait, these guys might be just as good, if not better, than some of the others that we discussed. And Castellano really hit his stride at the end of the year, and I think with success at the Double A level,
Yeah.
could make it a lot easier to potentially take this guy. Between high A and Double A, 22 appearances, 20 games started. He threw 103 and two-thirds innings, a 3.99 ERA, a 1.138 WHIP, but he struck out nearly 12 per nine and only walked 2.5 per nine. And that's like a breath of fresh air in this conversation, because usually it's going to be guys that have command woes that you're just wondering if they can mitigate them enough to succeed at the big league level. Castellano did in the past, Philly system, by the way. But now this year really put things together from a command perspective. Now his fastball is not incredibly unique. And that's okay though, because he throws pretty hard. He has a four seamer and a two seamer. And it's really the breaking balls that make him, or the breaking ball and the changeup that make him a legitimate candidate here to be selected. He threw his curveball 41% of the time this past year,
Yeah.
and it dominated. Opponents at 140 against it. It's an 81 to 83 mile per hour curveball. Whether you're a lefty or righty, you're going to have trouble with it. Big in zone whiff numbers. That really helps. And then the changeup off of that, like he has a pretty good feel for a changeup that looks like it can be a strong weapon as well. So you have at least the higher floor of, okay, this guy has a pair of fastballs in the mid 90s and a banger breaking ball that could make him a solid reliever, a multi-inning reliever. But also, this guy could be a starter with what we saw at the end of the year, with the changeup being, a pitch that he can mix in a little bit more and saw more consistency with at the end of the year. And I think that really helps too. But he definitely is a splits guy at this point, right? 565 OPS against righties. That makes sense, right? Because his best pitch is a breaking ball. 740 OPS against lefties. So that's fine. That like if you dominate righties, that's fine. And I think that the dominance against the righties gives him that reliever floor. But the fact that he can actually at least hedge lefties more than ever, now that that changeup has come along,
Yep.
I think this guy could be a starter, but you could also be a little patient with him, and he could be effective out of the gate as a reliever.
And he limits the free pass, which is like a really important thing here. And you know that he's going to be able to challenge guys. And you're going to put this guy in low leverage situations in his first year in the big leagues. If you do take him in the Rule 5 draft, and you don't want those innings getting out of hand, and you got to make a move at that point. And you're not going to
Exactly.
get that with him. You want to talk about being a little different timing wise. This is a little different timing wise, and it looks pretty stock. Like it does. The hand breaks at the same time that the lead leg comes down. But at the very last moment, you almost think that the ball's coming out, but he's got such a long arm swing with his right arm that the release of the ball is like a split second later than you would expect from him. And I think that snap and that movement of the upper body allows him to get even more whip on that low 80s curveball. And it's a tighter curveball. It's not like it's this huge bender, but it works because he's getting so much torque and whip on that thing.
That front shoulder almost goes and then the arm follows, which
Yeah.
might not be the best thing, like in terms of health. But people would try to analyze art like mechanics and say, "Oh, he's more likely." Everyone's getting hurt. It doesn't
don't
matter.
don't do the health thing, do the command thing. Like you
Yeah,
could say it's harder to command pitches if it
yeah,
looks like that, and it clearly is not that much of an
yeah.
issue for him control
No,
wise.
no. The only time I'd look at that stuff is if the velocity's dipping later in the start, and you're seeing things
Yeah.
like that, where it's like, okay, that high effort may affect him. Clearly not. He cut his walk rate in half and upped his strike rate by 7%, and then validated all of that by succeeding at the double A level. He's 6'3", 230. He's a big body. Like I love the ability to get ground balls to it. And I think you brought up an excellent point, which is that he can actually be that innings eater as you develop him and mop up duty, because the worst thing in the world would be this game's out of hand. Let's bring in our mop up guy and he can't get an out because he can't throw a strike.
Yeah.
This is a guy that's going to throw enough strikes and he's going to get ground balls. Again, nothing that is incredibly unique about the fastball aside from what you had mentioned in terms of just him kind of being deceptive. The release height's slightly below average, but so is the vert. I think it helps a ton that he has the two different fastballs, right? Where he's going to have a two seamer and a four seamer as well. And I think that also with that release, I think that two seamer plays up. And I'd like to see him maybe use that a little bit more because of the way that that front shoulder comes at you, the arm kind of lags behind. I think that arm side run can really play up to righties. And I think that also is part of the reason why he succeeds more against righties. He actually uses that sinker more against right-handed hitters and had a little bit more success with that. So this is a guy that I wouldn't be shocked either. Just given the profile, it's just sound. And um, with the double A success, I think that can help his case.
Perfect. Yep. I'm totally in on that front. I feel like this is one of the very few starting pitchers that could actually go and maybe make some starts. I don't know if it's weird enough for the Rockies, but like a team that needs some starting pitching, like I could see the White Sox taking this guy because they just need innings.
Yep.
And I don't know what they're gonna do with Schultz. Is he gonna repeat double A? Like I was just kind of thinking about that last night. Like Noah Schultz is not going to Charlotte.
It
Is he
would
a
be
big leaguer or is he going to double A?
it would be really silly for have him in that Southern League again. But I guess like he's just throwing bullpens out there, right? Like he's going to dominate guys no matter what. It's such a pitcher friendly environment, but send him to triple. Get him working with those guys up there. Why not? I know
Get him
Charlotte's
in
a hitter friendly
box.
environment. I don't care.
Okay, fair. My thought is like, okay, if you feel like Schultz is going to be in the minor leagues for the front half of the year, and it probably is. Take a guy in the Rule 5 that can start games, especially because Thorpe had that injury scare last year, and you've some assortment of Cannon, Burke, Davis Martin is going to be out there. You might as well mix in a guy like this that
Yeah,
could be
no
good
doubt.
in Castellano.
You got this room on the 40 man, see what can happen. And yeah, buys you some time. You want to manage Schultz's innings and kind of ease him in there. So when he gets that big league debut, we assume sometime this season.
Yeah,
And people's time now.
Ben Peoples
This
time.
is a unique fastball. And people's, th- Another player in this Rays system that, I mean, they've got a handful and more that we didn't even get to today that could be selected. They're going to have multiple arms selected. And the more I think about it, the Marlins are obviously going to take one of their arms.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's all that we have seen Peter Bendix do is
Yeah.
go get former Rays farmhands. Why would you not take one of these arms here? And this is one of the, they have several of the better arms. People's generic release, but there's nothing generic about the pitch shape.
Yeah.
He is a cut ride guy. And cut ride essentially means that you are getting a lot of vert, or at least, I guess the vert part doesn't totally matter, but it makes it better and better the more vert you get.
Yeah.
A fastball with 0 inches of horizontal break. Like you think about it, just naturally, when you throw a fastball, you're going to get 5, 6, 7 inches of horizontal break because it's just the way it rolls off your fingers. But guys that have that natural little cut to it, like they're going to kill that horizontal. And that's why it almost seems like it's cutting the other way. It's not necessarily cutting to the glove side, right? By definition, it's moving for Ben Peoples 0.1 inches horizontally, but it appears that way to these hitters because every fastball they've ever seen moves at least a few inches, horizontally.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. The other part of it is if you have the tendency to cut it a little bit to prevent that horizontal, generally you're going to lose some vert. So if you are getting a ton of vert and killing horizontal, that creates a very unique look. And that's what Peoples does here, right? He averaged 17 and a half inches of induced vertical break and 0.1 inches of horizontal. Generally, those cut ride fastballs will be 13, 14, 15 inches of induced vertical break. Because again, these guys naturally cut them a little bit and they're just not going to backspin all the way up there. That's what I think makes Peoples intriguing enough alone. Enough of these teams, I think, are going to see that. He also gets above average extension. Those are the little things where you start to tack those on top, and it's like, okay, this is very unique. And it's
Yeah.
94. He's dealt with injuries. He's currently on the 60-day IL, but I think that was more precautionary. I think he's going to be healthy and ready to go for the start of the season. But some injuries have been part of the problem for him and could be enough to scare a team away. But just to make you, kind of realize how unique this fastball is. He had good numbers last year. You can walk us through them. He trusts his fastball so much. He threw it 66% of the time
Damn.
and
Damn.
to plenty of success. And guess what his number one secondary was? A cutter.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit more of the cut. That pitch was dominant as well. He's mixed in a slider, a curveball, and a changeup. And the changeup specifically actually is flashed and looks like it could be a good pitch. But all of those pitches he only mixes in, a handful of times per start. So that's the other side of it too. A team could say, hey, like let's mix these in a little bit more and see what it looks like. Or team could say, let's move you to the bullpen. Watch that fastball tick up to 96. With
Yeah.
that kind of action, he could do the flip the glove and go. And I think that with the cutter mixed in there and the occasional taste break and changeup, this guy could be a disgusting multi-inning relief arm. This is also that Justin Slayton cloth to me,
Yeah.
that where I could see him just really excelling in that role.
Yeah, the numbers on Peoples this year: 55 and a third innings at a 3.42 in Double A, and opponents hit 204 against him. He K'd 9.5 per nine. He walked 3.5 per nine. It was funny. I went to go look at the delivery again, and I clicked on a game that he threw in Chattanooga, and I just got pissed off. I was like,
Oh
"Come
my
on,
gosh.
get
Yep.
better
I was
cameras, please."
I was watching that one too. You
Yeah,
you
it's
missed
like,
you missed one really important highlight reel though.
who was that
One guy has hit a home run more than 400 feet off of Ben Peoples' fastball in 2024. Who was it?
in 2024?
Yeah.
Um, can you give me like the organization? I know it's going to be somebody
There was a
funny.
trivia question I think I asked you of like who's the only person to hit a home run off of Evan Reifert's slider.
Yeah, and it was Austin Hendrick.
It's Austin Hendrick again.
No way.
I
What's this
swear.
guy doing, man?
He only hits disgusting pitches.
Austin Hendrick, by the way, also Rule 5
Yes.
eligible. So if somebody wants to take Austin Hendrick, the former
The
first round pick of
Kingslayer?
the Reds,
He's the
dude,
Kingslayer. He's just only going to homer off of Cy Young candidates and then hit a buck 80.
being a Kingslayer of Rule 5 draft picks, I don't think really qualifies as Kingslayer, but you know what? You march to the beat of your own drum, Austin Hendrick.
Uh,
It does seem a little high effort.
mhm.
I'm also curious why Tampa hasn't tried him as a reliever like at all. The last time he made more than one relief appearance in a given year was 2021 at the complex. Like 2022, He came out of the pen once, and it was in long relief. 2023, he did not come out of the pen. 2024, he did not come out of the pen.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I wonder if some of it was just as simple as the investment that they had into him and maybe the promise that they made to him when
Yeah.
they signed him away from high school from college, right? Out of high school. 22nd round pick in 2019, but they gave him fifth round money to forego college. So I wonder if that was part of it. The Rays do, get a lot of credit for the way that they treat their minor leaguers and kind of the way that they uphold their end of the bargain. And I wonder, if there was just a level of, hey, we promise that you're going to get every opportunity to start and if you sign with us and whatever. And he hasn't really had a ton of runway because of injury. And of course, you signed in 2019, forego college, COVID happens, and then he had 21 where that was really his first time to get to throw a decent amount, but he was hurt until July. And then 2022, he gets this runway, looks pretty good as a starter. And then 23 follows that with some flashes, but then gets hurt again. And then 24 was kind of the same. He has one bad start. And that's the crazy part. And I know we always talk about like how it can be silly to do the remove this one start game that we like to do sometimes. But in an instance where you really didn't see him throw a ton this year,
Yeah.
and if I take out this one start, it's 52 and two thirds innings. He had one blow up start at the only launch pad in the Southern League, which is Biloxi.
Yeah.
If you remove that start, the other 11 starts, he had a 2.22 ERA and 52 and two thirds innings. Only 33 hits allowed. I'm with you though. I think it's a reliever outlook, and I think a good one and one that can go multi innings
Yeah.
and maybe even open for you and turn the lineup over. But I think to answer your question, this coming season, whether he's selected or not, will probably be where we see him transition into that relief role.
Got you.
But I would love to know, what the Rays answer is on that. But again, it could be as simple as just upholding, their end of the bargain.
Yeah, and I think they might get away with this. Like, I'm not sure if he's going to get taken because he hasn't thrown since June 13th. Like, he didn't throw for the final,
Yeah.
3.5 months of
Are
the
you
year.
getting like medicals and all that good stuff for the Rule 5? Like,
I have
I
no
wouldn't
idea.
want to. Like, if I'm a team and a team wants to take my guy, oh, can you give us the medical? No, no. That roll the dice,
Is
buddy.
that fair play? I
I
don't
don't know, man.
know.
No, but I wonder how that works because, it's one of those instances where it's, you're helping them snatch away one of your players.
Right.
But I'm sure there's some rules to that. Maybe you have to submit something to all rule. That's something I got to do some digging on. I have no idea, but maybe you just have to roll the dice and you don't know. Uh, I don't know how that works. We'd have
Yeah.
to ask around on that front.
It'd just be 50K, like 50K for the other team.
Andrew Moore, command problems, but he's so nasty
Good
that I
pitch.
think a team could take a chance. Now, trivia, unless you remember, I don't know if you saw, because I
Is
threw
the
him
answer
into
Austin Hendrick?
same team, they're teammates,
Okay,
so
got
that
you.
won't work this time. Um, what trade was he included in?
Andrew Moore.
He's the most forgotten guy ever in this trade package.
Was it? Tell me it wasn't the Winker A. Eugenio Suarez deal.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Was it the? Was it the Luis Castillo deal?
Yes, he was thrown into the
Okay,
Luis
so
Castillo deal.
it was Edwin Arroyo, Noelvi Marte, and Andrew Moore.
And yeah, yeah.
I think it was those
I
three.
think we're missing one.
I'll Google and let you know.
But yeah, Andrew Moore, the forgotten player, I think in that package. This is the epitome of the opposite of what basically any hitter would expect from his physique, right? This is a 6'5" pitcher. Also, no, don't tell me. I know who the other one is. You forgot Levi
Okay.
Stout. You forgot
Yeah, I
Levi
forgot
Stout.
Levi Stout.
You forgot
Yeah.
Levi Stout. How could you forget Levi Stout? The goat. He left Cincinnati, making sure he let some people know that they held him back. You remember
Yeah,
that?
so that was him. I
Yeah.
I confused him and Luke Weaver. I'm glad that it wasn't Luke Weaver. Levi
Nah,
Stout was the
couldn't have
one
been.
that said Cincinnati was holding him back. Good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, Moore, his command is holding him back. He walks 16% of batters, but this dude, for a 6'5", 200 and like 15-pound pitcher, who looks taller than that somehow. He has a release height of 5.1 feet. How is that possible? You'd
And
think
not sidearm.
that's the thing. That's the only way that you would think it's possible, but it's not. Like, and that's where you look at the horizontal angle as well. It's not. And of course, he gets a lot of horizontal. You're going to naturally, no one that goes that low is going to be able to just have like 16 inches of vert and 5 of horizontal. But once the release height gets that low, if you get more vert than horizontal, it's going to play well. And that's why people will look at like Brian Wu, like, oh, like that fastball almost flirts with the dead zone. Doesn't matter. It's not a sinker. Like that's all that matters when you're releasing from that low of a release point. If you get more vert than horizontal, it doesn't matter if it flirts with the dead zone. Like that is, if it's straight, that is weird. And
Yeah.
this dude is even more weird because he's a 6'5" pitcher who releases from a 5.1 foot release height. That I don't, I would love if I had the ability to do this, but I would guarantee that you could probably count on one hand of the pitchers in professional baseball that are 6'5" and above that release from a 5.2 or below release height and get more vert than horizontal on their fastball. It would be a very short list. And I know teams have the ability to do that. And that would be enough, I think, for me to think, ooh, a team could just take a shot on the funk and just hope that he can throw enough strikes. Obviously a reliever, but the strikeout numbers are insane.
Yeah, I'm looking at this delivery right now and it just doesn't really make much sense. Like it's just kind of breaking my brain at the moment. And Cincinnati, man, like I'm not saying that they're some sort of, reliever hotbed and they're just spawning them like Tampa is, but I mean Cincinnati's got some guys making their way through. And I don't know if it's um trace amounts of the drive line experience left over,
If you
but
ask the Reds front office, they'd say, hell no.
they'd say absolutely not, but I think there is, a slim chance that it is just kind of like, trace amounts of the driveline experience. Like Zach Maxwell. How many teams are identifying Zach Maxwell out of Georgia Tech? That's a huge human being, but they found a guy that's throwing 101, 102 miles an hour. And this guy, like, I mean, it's tall, it's long, but like the length turns into horizontal going down the mound, and then this weird whippy motion with his arms. Like it's
It's it's
bizarre to
it's
me.
wild. And this is one of those where I just feel like that the risk is higher than maybe any of the arms that we're going to
For
mention.
sure.
But this is one where if you're maybe a more competitive team with, I think, the roster spot available, take the shot, see how spring training goes, see how the first month or two of the season goes. If you lose 50, the Reds will 100% take him back. If
Yeah.
you lose $50,000 on a shot at a guy that, if it clicks, will 100% be capable of pitching at high leverage,
Yeah.
why not?
Why not?
So that's the one. That's why I think he can be picked. Opponents at 200 against him. The in zone whiff rate numbers on the fastball are ridiculous. They hit 184 against his fastball, by the way, which we talked about the characteristics. He sits 96. He touched 100 this year as well. The cutter is gross, and then he mixes in a slider and a curveball. So I could just see him being worth a shot, even though he might be the most likely to be returned. I would take the shot if I'm a competitive team rather than, oh, this guy might be able to pitch the sixth for us. Let's get a guy here that might be able to pitch the eighth for us if he's anywhere around the zone. And remember, he doesn't need to cut his walk rate in half. If he's walking 10, 11% of batters, if you're striking out 37%, you're fine.
He's K'ing 14 per nine right now. He K'd 93 and 59 and a third innings. So like you take a chance on strikeout artists. And if they work in the sixth, great. You could probably get him to work in the eighth.
And in 2022, he struck out 38% of batters. He gave
That's
up one home run. I
for
don't
those
know
that
who.
want the per nine, it's 15.6 Ks per nine in 2022.
That doesn't make sense.
It's really
That's
good.
crazy. So help this guy throw a few more strikes and could be a dude.
Yep.
I got one more. Are there any others?
Yeah, we got four more here on
Whoa.
the rundown, but who's the one that you really want to prioritize?
Elison Joseph.
Okay. Yeah.
Is it Elison? Ellison Joseph?
Dude, I have no
You know, it's
idea.
funny. If you flip it around, it's like the most American name ever, Joseph Ellison.
Joseph Ellison. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like somebody that helped Edison find, the electricity.
But Joseph, Ellison Joseph, Braves, gross. That's just like, I'll start there. Gross. This is Velo kind of over everything. and some funk. This is a two pitch mix that I think you can just throw right into the bullpen. Probably a guy that you'd want to ease in, have him in the sixth. But I think by year two, year three, could develop into this high leverage arm. He was dominant this year between high A and double A. And, I'll let you get to the numbers, but the fastball average 97. The slider sits in the mid 80s. And I mean, it looks like it's even harder than that sometimes.
Yeah, Elison Joseph. By the way, I should have just gone to Larry Ellison. Did you read any of that, like Larry Ellison, Bryce Underwood stuff?
No.
Larry Ellison, I think, is the Oracle guy. He's one of the five richest
Uh,
people on earth. And like his wife, I want to say, went to the University of Michigan. So Larry Ellison and Portnoy got in touch
oh,
and
yeah,
they
that's how they
put
got that
together
top
that,
QB.
yeah, that NIL package to flip Underwood from LSU to Michigan. But Larry Ellison, he has two L's in his last name. Ellison Joseph has one L in his first name. No relation. But Ellison Joseph, 23 years old, this year, 39 appearances at a 2.04 ERA. 53 innings, he K'd 13 per nine. He walked 4.8 per nine. So in 53 innings, 76 punchouts, 28 walks. Do you have the batting average against? Because it's 33 hits in 53 innings.
173.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, I know he's a reliever that hasn't thrown above double A, but you tell me, because clearly I want to draft all of these guys. Um,
Well,
is
I
this guy
mean,
worth a shot for you?
he's absolutely worth a shot. And the fact that he leveled up, like he had a 2.48 in Rome and 32 and two thirds. And then he goes to Mississippi, and I know that it's the Southern League, yada, yada. 20 in the third innings, he faced 87 hitters. He allowed 12 hits. Like
Yeah.
he allowed three earned runs in 20 and a third innings in double A.
And I love his release, man. Like it's free and easy. He's only 23. And this is one of those fastballs where nothing jumps off the page in a like alone, but everything is solid across the board or like comfortably above average. He gets 17 inches of vert from a 5'6" release height. The average vert from that release height, and I'm kind of just guesstimating because I don't have it in front of me right now. I would say
Yeah.
it's probably around 14 inches, maybe 15. But then on top of that, he throws 97. So that's obviously well above average. So that's you're gonna have maybe 55 grade carry to close to 60 grade carry. You're gonna have 70 grade velo, and then the extension is average, which is fine because usually a 6 foot guy that's that low release, like or not that low, but below average release is not going to get a ton of extension. Gets it, and it's a flat approach angle, so it just takes off. I think a little bit more than it looks like. And he can spin it. He averages like 2,500 RPM on the fastball. So even that higher spin, I think also just makes it feel like it's whizzing to the catcher's mitt a little bit quicker. And those are all little things as well. And then the slider, like that pitch was absolutely dominant. He threw it 56% of the time this past year, and opponents at 146 against it. What I like he has the combination of being able to get the whiff, but also he'll mix in some ground balls. Command is something to monitor, and I think that could hold some teams back, given that it's a reliever with some command. But I think he showed enough to where could make sense for a team to carry him. But I could see the walk rate being too intimidating to put him on the 26-man roster. But a 1.33 ERA over his final 20 appearances with a 35% strikeout rate, like worth a shot.
Absolutely worth a shot. There are three more guys here sticking on an Atlanta Brave. So can you explain to me why Enoli Paredes would be eligible for the Rule 5 draft? Because Enoli Paredes has big league experience under his belt, but you said he signed a minor league deal with Atlanta. He has no options left. So, like, why would that make him Rule 5 eligible if he has that big league experience under his belt? Because he signed that minor league contract?
Yeah, so because he signed, and this is why I actually like this wrinkle. And I think it was a year or two ago where a guy in this situation ended up being taken in the Rule Five. It's I guess a way to protect some of these guys as well that kind of fit under the umbrella to not get stashed in the minor leagues too long either. I think it's kind of just one of those technicalities, but um,
Yeah.
he's Rule 5 eligible and he didn't sign to a major league deal. So he's right back into the minor leagues like he was before. And the qualifications for it, he checks every box, right? Yeah, how many years he spent in the minor leagues, and he's eligible to be added to the 40-man roster. So anytime you're not on that 40-man roster as a guy that's played X amount of years in the minor leagues, I believe you're always eligible to be selected in the Rule 5 draft.
So, like, could a team take Jake Lamb if he signed a minor league deal?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
I'm pretty sure. And like Ronnie Simon, I know he hasn't played in the bigs, but like that's a guy that I would not floor me if a team took him. Like they might be going and seeing him out in the winter league.
yeah.
He does something, particularly impressive to them. And
He's first team all winter league the last 3 years. He's
oh,
been awesome in the winter league.
he loves it out there. He loves it out there. But like that's the fun thing in this. Like there's some minor league free agents that you could sign a guy and be like, oh, well, now I guess we lost him.
Yeah.
So that's the fascinating part of this. I think there was one other name of like a minor league free agent that could technically be taken. I'm trying to remember who it was. But yeah, that's the fun aspect of this too is you could sign a minor league deal with the team. And then if another team, I guess the way I look at it, it makes sense if you boil it down to this is the Braves deemed him good enough to be signed,
Yeah.
but not good enough to, be on their MLB roster.
Yeah.
If another team says, hey, we didn't sign him, but now the more research we do, like that's a guy that actually, with the way our roster shook out this offseason, like we actually think he is worthy of a MLB spot for us.
Yeah.
Isn't that the whole purpose of the Rule 5 draft anyways? So
It is.
I think that's the cool part of where it can kind of, extend to those guys as well.
Yeah, and he was a tweener last year. Like he was really good in AAA, but in the big leagues, like, hey, you know what? 20 and 2/3 innings, he had a 1.74 ERA, but he walked 10. Like,
Yeah.
and in his big league career, 54 big league innings, he's got an ERA at 3 even, but he's walked 41 in 54 innings. So the question is, do you feel like this 29-year-old is worthy of being in your big league bullpen? And the answer could be yes, and like it's lower risk because he's done the big league bounce around thing. Like he's played for what, Houston, Milwaukee, and the Cubs at this point. So, you know,
Yeah.
that opportunity presents
Yeah,
itself.
the floor is higher where it's like, okay, you definitely have at least like a middle relief guy potentially here, but I'm with you. Like I'm being more risk tolerant in this instance with the Rule 5. I'm taking a shot on a guy that I'm hoping I can unlock something, especially with all the talent that you have pitching wise throughout the minor leagues. Like there's some of these guys that, could actually be dudes. But what makes Paredes unique is this is another cut ride guy, but to just kind of show how unique Peoples is, like this, actually, I take it back because this is also very unique in a lot of ways. So he gets 13 inches of vert and 1 inch of horizontal movement. So we were talking about it, like usually cut rod guys will be around that range, but this is a 5'1" release height.
Wow.
So getting cut, I don't know if I've seen a ton of guys get cut ride from a release that low. He is super lean and athletic. And you talk about guys working down the mound. He looks like he's actually about to lay down, like do like a head first slide before he throws. He gets down there. So it makes sense that he was able to generate between the minors and the majors last year a 38% in zone whiff rate on his fastball. And the slider, he commands the heck out of 70% strike rate on that. He could go. I'm surprised he didn't get a big league deal after what he did last year, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just weird because
I
like
guess because the minimum is so expensive. Like you
the
go from
minimum, the minimum.
yeah.
I mean, you go from what, 50K a year to $750,000 a year. Like,
Yeah, and the interesting thing, this is the other wrinkle in it. I guess if you take him though in the Rule 5, you would be inheriting whatever minor league deal he signed. And I'd imagine that Elison Joseph, he didn't sign for the AAA minimum. Like, some of these guys, some of these top minor league free agents are getting 25, 30,000 a month.
Paredes, you mean?
Oh, sorry, what
Enoli
did I say?
Paredes.
What did I
You
say?
said Elison Joseph.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at him right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Good catch. Good catch. Enoli Paredes, like
Yeah.
he could have signed a deal for 20 plus thousand a month or 30,000 a month, and that might be enough for a team to say, hey, well, if we're paying him, half of the big league minimum, and we got to pay another 100,000, maybe he doesn't get selected. But if he was making the baseline AAA amount of money, I think he's almost a guarantee to go. But he probably signed with the Braves because they offered him, I would imagine, a decent chunk of change. And that's the whole wrinkle that we never know about. It's never public. It never really gets reported on. But these minor league free agent signings, it's not just, oh, you automatically get paid minor league money. Some of these guys make, and I love that about, like, that's the great part about it is like, some of these guys make $30,000 a month or whatever it is. And like, I'll go live in Nashville and play in AAA for 30,000 a month. Are you kidding me?
For sure.
Are you kidding me? So like, that's why when people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's still kicking. Yeah. Cause he's living the life, man. And he can support his family with that, so that's the cool part of it. And then you get up for a cup of coffee, you can end up pushing closer to 500,000 really easily there. So Paredes is a guy that, depending on how expensive the minor league deal is, I think could be taken because that slider command paired with how unique that fastball is in 94, that'll play.
Yeah, no doubt.
We got
We got
two more.
two more. Michael Flynn is the next one. Michael Flynn, I really don't know much at all about. Who is this cat?
Michael Flynn, I didn't know a ton about him either, but just more Rays guys. That was almost
Good.
the majority of the reason of why I felt like we needed to do this was like I found more Rays guys. We're gonna need to talk about them because I know at least a couple of them are gonna go.
Yeah.
Righty does like has a really unique arsenal as well, where slider that he will throw a ton, 43% usage, but it's a dominant pitch. 70% strike rate, huge in zone whiff numbers, 20% swinging strike rate as well. But off of that, he has a cutter that he will use that is a very effective pitch for him, and then a slider as well. So just looking at what he likes to do too, another guy that really gets low, a 5.1 foot release height again. Like we don't talk about, we'll do whole systems where we don't talk about a guy with a 5.1 release height. So
Yeah.
again, this is why we're trying to pluck the most unique pitchers here. He is the more classic result of that release height though, where he's going to get 14 inches of horizontal and 6 inches of vertical. So it's going to be that two seamer for the most part. But he also will mix in a four seamer that when he's able to command it, usually the guys that get lower release and horizontal, when they mix in the four seamer, they struggle to command it. He definitely struggles to command it. But when he does throw it within the zone, it just messes up hitters' minds because they're used to everything kind of going horizontally and it gets big whiff. So if he can hone that in a little bit, that could make a huge difference for him. But he's a 6'3 righty. He's 28, so a little bit older, but I think when you look at what he did last year, the success he had in AAA, another guy that you can look at like one blow up start, that or blow up appearance that really hurt him, but he bounced from the Dodgers org to the Rays org. So that's a guy that I do think could very well be taken just off of that merit alone. Do you have why he went from where to where? Was he claimed? What was it? Um,
I don't have that in front of me, but I can find that very, very quickly as I
Oh,
pull
he
up
was
his.
acquired for Ahmed Rosario.
Oh, I thought wasn't Rosario DFA'd by Tampa?
So he
Uh,
was acquired in July 29th, 2024, traded Michael Flynn to Tampa Bay Rays for Ahmed Rosario.
yeah, let me figure out Rosario's transaction
So
log
he might have been
too.
DFA'd and then they just, swapped a prospect. That whole thing always confuses me too.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, it was a trade and then he
Straight to-
was DFA'd. He was DFA'd by the Dodgers
got it.
like 2 weeks later. And then the Reds claimed him. And then they DFA'd him. And then he elected free agency.
Got it.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, fun 2 months for Ahmed Rosario. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was a
jeez.
trade.
Jeez. Well, I mean, again, Dodgers org, and then a guy that the Rays clearly identified and wanted to add to the fold here.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he was a reliever at Arkansas. This is really his first. Wait. This is
Arizona,
sorry,
right?
Arizona.
Yeah.
Arizona. This is a fun case. Reliever at Arizona into starter, and then really has been battling out there for years. And I think found some funk, found some things that work for him. And this could be another guy that just works out of a pen when you've got the weird fastball, a four seamer that he can mix in a little bit, the cutter and slider as well. It's a pretty well-rounded arsenal, and I think kind of screams multi-inning relief if you need. And you look at the numbers overall; he struck out 33% of batters, walked only 9%. He had to throw a lot of the year in the PCL. But the other thing that I love is fly ball guy that survived in the PCL for a lot of the year. And also the average exit velocity on him is super, super, super low. So that's something that is interesting to me as well. Like he could be that kind of pitch to contact, maybe like mix in the whiff though. Clearly he got a lot of strikeouts, but even when he's not getting strikeouts, he can kind of be that like Dylan Floro type of guy that is still able to be an effective reliever off of getting a ton of weak contact as well.
Yep. And then last but not least, Carlos Duran from the LA Dodgers. So another Dodger. This is a gargantuan human on the mound. Carlos Duran, 6'7", 230. He had some serious prospect intrigue, and then Tommy John, he missed the entirety of the 2023 season. But in 22 in Great Lakes, he had a 4.17 ERA, and then this year, he made 7 starts in Low A Rancho. They were, very heavily protected. Then made 11 shortened starts with Double A Tulsa. He He had a 3.05 ERA there, and then he got up for 4 outs with Oklahoma City. So this is a guy coming off injury that is a starting pitcher, but aside from Yordani Monegro, probably the other prospect that's
Yeah.
Rule 5 eligible.
I can just see him taken off of the prospect intrigue, the 6'6" frame being a Dodgers prospect with
Yeah.
prospect intrigue, and just the fact that his slider is diabolical.
Yeah.
I I wouldn't be as inclined to take him as some of the other names I think here, but that slider is outrageous. Opponents hit 160 against it, and it's 86 to 87 miles per hour. I don't love like he throws hard, so it helps, but like the fastballs are the four seamer is dead zone. And then he has a sinker or a two seamer that has a ton of horizontal run. That pitch actually looks good, but he can't land it because it runs so much. It's like 17 inches of horizontal, and he just struggles to spot it. It seems to just always run out of the zone. So having the crazy horizontal separation could be something that I think really entices teams. And he's also a 6'6" guy that gets below average extension. It's it's a unique case, and I just feel like being in the Dodgers org, like if he hasn't fixed these things by now, like
When's
I
it
just
ever
don't
going
know
to
what it's
happen?
totally going to look like. Plus the command issues, plus the delivery definitely looks high effort and maybe hard to repeat.
Yeah.
I could again, I think he can be selected just off of the slider, the prospect intrigue, and he's 6'6" and he's only 23 and he won't turn 24 until the trade deadline.
Yeah.
But I think this would be a guy that I would expect to potentially get returned just
Yeah.
because I don't know if he's near ready for any big league run yet.
I would think so as well. Only other Dodger that is Rule 5 eligible that we never talked about, my guy Hyun Il Choi. Did you see he's Rule 5 eligible?
Yeah, you think he's averaging over 90 yet?
I no. I don't think he's going to be taken. Insane like fall from grace because he was 94, 95 when he was at the lower levels, and then I'm not sure, did injuries play a part in that? I'm sure they
Had
did.
to. I mean, had to. He's 6'2", 200. You'd think he'd throw a little harder. He averaged 91 last year on the fastball.
Yeah, he's not being taken, but I mean, he put together high A. This guy, like, it smacked me in the face. I think it was, I gotta find the actual game log, but it was like something like 80 pitches, 71 for strikes, or something like that. I mean, it was
It
just
would
a
have been
nuts showing.
2021 against Fort Wayne.
2021 against Fort Wayne.
2021 against Fort Wayne. 2021. So it was 74 pitches, 61 for strikes.
Yeah, and then what was the line?
5 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, no walks, 8 Ks.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like I was watching clockwork from him.
74 pitches, 61 strikes
It
is
was
wild.
it was absolutely insane to watch.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Always
Well,
gonna remember you, Hyunil Choi, and I
hey,
hope you.
he'll get a spot start here or there. He held his own in AAA, but yeah, he ain't getting picked probably. And maybe
Sad.
maybe the Rockies will do a Anthony Molina run it back type of thing here. But that'll do it for this episode. The next time we talk Rule 5, we'll be talking about the two players who got selected, and that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bingo.
well, hopefully a bunch. I think there's a lot of openings on 40 man, and I think teams also don't want to spend a lot of money in free agency. So a lot of teams may want to address their bullpen this way. So it'll be fun. Looking forward to that. We'll see if any bats get taken. Before we wrap it up, over under 1.5 bats taken in this Rule 5.
I will go under.
I go under as
I
well.
think there's one bat, and I think it's gonna be Bobby Seymour.
That'd be sick. That'd be
Yeah,
sick, but it would be a challenge.
yeah.
We'll find out. It'll be a lot of fun. Of course, it'll be some random utility guy that we didn't cover as well. Like that's just the way
Oh,
it
we
goes
covered
sometimes.
Cooper Bowman.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. As always, thank you for listening. Hope you all had a wonderful holiday. If you could leave a rating, help us grow the show, that would be awesome. Share it with your friends, all that good stuff. We will be talking Royals prospects at the end of this week. Very excited about that. We are almost done with all the fresh lists, and then it's update season, and we'll have all those top 30s out, or top 15s for all 30 teams out. Look forward to talking prospects with you later this week.